I'm going to now transition to introducing our guest for this evening. Jessica Aldridge is really somebody that's kind of been on my radar for, gosh, I don't know, a couple decades, really. She's a name that pops up in so many different areas of environmental work. She used to host a radio show on KPFK. She was involved in a bunch of stuff in Burbank and the Valley. She's been involved in a number of areas, but today I think she's best known for her work as a true important advocate for an area of the climate that we don't spend enough time working on, and that is our waste issues and how waste is a tremendously important part of climate work. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having. Oh, can you hear me? I think my headset's a little
We
off.
can. Andy,
Oh, you
since
can.
yes,
Okay,
we
good.
can. Andy,
Uh,
since you're doing the host business, can you spotlight us? The person who normally does it, Jessica's not
Yes,
here,
give me a
so
second. You know I
good.
struggle with
all
this.
right, all good. Thank you. So, Jessica, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for
It's a
having
very
me.
fancy like one headphone or head ear thing over.
No, it's
Oh, there
here.
above. One's just
I
being
just
hidden
have a
back here.
lot of curly
All
hair.
right, all right, that works. All right. So, Jessica, real pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for taking your time, taking time to be with us here. One thing I learned in talking to you is that you are actually a climate reality ambassador yourself, and you attended the training that was in Los Angeles, and I believe it was 2019, right?
Yes, I did. I
So we are
remember that
so
over at
happy
the
to have
Staples
you,
Center.
and consider this our way of clawing you back into the fold, and with great hopes that we can have you as much as you'll allow us to. And I want to kind of just start with saying we always do these interviews, and they're about a climate journey. They're not just about necessarily one piece of work you've done or one project that you've worked on. They're about how you have kind of gone your own path in life and your educational journey, but also just what inspired you to start working on these things? Were there key moments? Were there like catalyst influences in your life? And could you talk a little bit about your evolution in terms of how you became the climate advocate that you are?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And again, thank you everyone for having me here today. And if at one point you can't hear me, just let me know because I think these are messy. I think I accidentally hit a button a second ago and it just did something very weird.
Sounds good so
Um,
far.
Good. Uh, there have been many moments that I can look back to and say that that was caused some significant shift in, the movement that I needed for myself or that kind of drove me to where I am. I do want to point out that, growing up, I grew up as a military brat. I traveled all over the world, all over the country, lived all over the country. And my connection to the environment, first and foremost, when I was growing up, was about nature itself. It wasn't about people. And that was the secondary part of it. And I myself had the privilege of it not being about people. And I want to say that I had the privilege of not having to feel the negative effects, greatly felt the negative effects of, the detriment to, the climate detriment or human health impacts or anything of that nature. In my studies and getting more deeply involved in my work, that's when that privilege was brought to a head, and I had to, understand what that actually meant. But I grew up in the mountains. I grew up, I started, I guess, the recycling team. I totally forgot about it until I looked at my yearbook, but started the recycling team for my high school that I think like went 2 semesters and then failed because I don't think we had any recycling infrastructure in the city. Um, and when I moved out here, I was just, I was in the entertainment industry. I have a business degree with an arts management and theater background, and that's what I was doing. And I kept getting pulled into the environmental world little by little. And one of the I guess mainstays of me saying, "Oh shit, I need to do something about this," was I did go see Inconvenient Truth, and I walked out of the theater and I said, "What is my role? Where can I make a difference? And where best can I provide assistance?" And and I started uh how I started it. So I worked at a a hospital, St. Joseph Medical Center over in Burbank, and they wanted to start a green team. They didn't know what that meant. They wanted to start recycling. They didn't know what that meant. Um, I was like, oh, okay, let me write you a business plan. I don't know if I even knew what that meant. And I said, this is what it should look like. And there's like, great, you can start the committee and you can head it and you can tell us what we need to do. And that's when I went over to the Burbank Recycle Center and I was like, wow, this is what happens to our waste. And one of the things that you'll hear in my story is that the reason why I'm at, where I'm at in my life is because I would just ask. I would ask for help. I would say, "Hey, how do I get involved in this? Hey, I'm looking for this. Hey, I want a job in this." And I have a, I have I always say, "Oh, I have the Cinderella story." No, I don't. I have a lot of amazing community that said, okay, this is really, I think this would work for you here. I want to introduce you to some people. But I used my words to say, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Can you help me out? And I went to the Burbank Recycle Center, said, what is this? And they said, oh, we're starting our zero waste plan. And I think this was before even Instagram. So this wasn't influencer led. There was no misinformation out there quite yet about what zero waste actually meant. And I was like, wow, that sounds cool. Can I do that? And they brought me on temporarily as their zero waste event coordinator. And then they were able to bring me on for a position for a couple of years. And I just pretty much had a crash course in dealing in waste and understanding what the resource management system was. At the same time, doing a bunch of other environmental organizing. And so that in working for the Burbank Recycle Center, we started the Burbank Green Alliance. And it wasn't just about waste, it was bringing green business, it was first called the Green Business Information Exchange. Such an awful title. And we started, one of the complaints within the community is they felt like a lot of education around environmentalism and how to get involved and what was happening was all happening on in Santa Monica and Venice, and it was all happening on the West Coast, on the West Side. So we wanted to bring that over to the East Side. I mean, there's stuff, amazing things happening within our community, but it wasn't being advertised. There was amazing things happening in East LA. There was amazing things happening in downtown, but it wasn't being advertised. So we wanted at that time, and we wanted to do something in Burbank to just provide support. And that's sort of how it started. And then my and it all snowballed from there. I started working. There was a federal and green jobs grant that ended up allowing people to be educated in the resource management world. So I was able to attach myself to that, get trained, get certification, ended up teaching at Santa Monica College at the recycling and resource management first time around when they offered that course for the first 3 semesters. And then eventually in asking people, I had been a consultant at that point for waste. I had worked for the municipality. I had, worked at the collegiate level. And then I was like, no, I want to work for a waste hauler. I want to get it all under my belt to see what that's about. And so
Get
I
your hands dirty,
wanted
literally.
to get my hands dirty. And I asked and I put it out there. And someone came to me one day and said, I got headhunted by the company I work for now, Athens Services. I think you're better for this role than I am. And they sent me the job description. And here I am 14 years later.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting path. And you talk about how I think a lot of us uh, come to Los Angeles, or if we are raised in Los Angeles, we have a romanticization with the entertainment industry when we're young, and it's interesting to me how many stories, and I have that background myself in terms of that's what brought me to Los Angeles. And I think at some point, for so many of us, it kind of becomes a way to introduce us to all the other problems in the world
Mm.
that we then find something that actually sticks for us. And I've heard a lot of stories like that in terms of, just people in Los Angeles who have gone through that kind of ultimate evolution of their own internal work. And can you talk a little bit about just big picture now, so we can, for those who maybe have not connected the dots as much, why is waste a climate issue? and
Mm.
how is it that we should really be thinking about it as climate advocates?
That's a great question. What's some of the things I didn't mention? I started when we were with this leads to answering your question, and we talked about this previously.
Right.
When I was doing Burbank Green Alliance and we were becoming more advocacy based, we ended up starting Tar Sands Action Southern California, and then that led into creating a coalition of organizations. Was my dream was like, oh my God, there's so many amazing things happening. Maybe we could just all come together as a coalition of organizations and just get behind a couple of things and just push it when we need to. And we did that. And then that ended up rolling into what eventually became the local 350.org chapter. So 350s, SoCal 350. And oh, my mind just went blank. Oh my gosh. I think I'm getting a little sick.
No, no,
Please
no,
repeat your
you're
question for
doing
a
great.
second.
And we want the plug, and I'll point out to everybody that
Oh, yes, I know
yeah,
what we were saying.
yeah. So,
Sorry, I do think I'm coming down with the flu today, so I've been trying to like pound
well, I hope you're wrong on that, but okay.
but so in doing that, we would go to these trainings for 350.org and they would put up the bubble chart onto say, okay, what's the most important thing that we need to focus on? Oh, keep it in the ground, oil extraction, da 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 da. And then I'd be like, well, waste needs to be a part of this. And they would like, oh yeah, okay, put it over here. And it would always make its way down to the bottom of the page, the big board that we were looking at. And I was like, well, we need to connect the dots here. If we're saying that we want to keep oil in the ground, that we want to reduce transportation, that we want to reduce our dependency on oil, what does that actually mean? Why are we so dependent on oil? What are we moving with that oil? What are we creating with that oil? Where is it actually, why are we so dependent upon it? And then what happens after we utilize it? It becomes waste, and in what form? And so the life cycle of what what we usually consider waste is the thing that's like down here. It's this thing, okay, I have to figure out how to throw it away. Well, there's a whole life to that product before we get it, from the point of extraction to processing it, to transportation, to processing it, to transporting again, to processing it into a new product, to transporting it to our stores for us consuming it, buying it, and then it's disposal on the back end. That whole entire life cycle has everything to do with oil extraction
Yeah,
and
it really
energy
does.
consumption.
And I think it's so important that we think not just about life cycle, but talk about, we it's very easy to focus on fossil fuels and resource extraction, but uh, resource extraction ultimately ends up being all the crap that we throw away and that we pollute the entire world with. I mean, there's a direct connection between these two, and one of the best ways to solve one of our fossil fuel and greenhouse gas problems is to make producer accountability and to make
Yeah.
things with respect to packaging and to reduce the waste component even before we consider all the negatives of the waste. So yeah, I think it's an unsung area, and I really appreciate work that you and many others do in this area, and who don't get credit for being such important components of the environmental, effort that's there. With respect to advocacy, which is what a group like ours does, um, it is, and you and I talked about this a little bit previously, both here and then at the tour we did at Athens a while back, how the system that we've set up has kind of given producers a free pass with respect to, they make a product, put it out in the world, and then they're not accountable for what happens. And so things get pushed off onto the individual to try to be good in their heart and altruistic and actually solve the problem. And some people will, some people won't. And either way, we're not well equipped to do it because of the system the way it is. This gets at the heart of advocacy in terms of changing that. What fundamental things can we do as advocates to try to change that very dysfunctional system?
Mhm. Oh, that's a heavy question right
Yeah,
there.
that's
I wish we could just like wave the magic wand and be able
yeah.
to have
Yeah.
full control of the system, but
Fresh out of magic
we
wands here. I'm sorry.
I know. I keep trying to order one and it's not coming in. Yeah, so going back to this concept, we call it extended producer responsibility. There has to be an extended responsibility on the producers of these products. And that's the reason why legislation like SB 54 was passed. And we'll see how far that can be taken, but that's like my
Like,
life right now is
let's do a quick summary of what that is for people who don't know what that is.
yeah. So SB 54 is a piece of legislation that is in effect, and they are trying to figure out what the producer's responsibility plan is going to be by the end of this year. And what it does is it takes it makes producers responsible for the products, the packaging products that are being sold in the state of California. Those products need to be recyclable or they need to be compostable within the systems of California. So the majority of jurisdictions have to be able to collect this material, and the majority of the processors of this material, like Athens or Waste Hauler, has to be able to do something with this material. They can't just say, well, there's a couple different places over in Wisconsin that can take the material, so it's recyclable. No, that's not how this works. Or as we'll talk about later, if someone has a question in regards to it, just because it's certified compostable doesn't mean that it's actually going to be able to be composted within the state of California or wherever it's being taken. Hopefully, it's not being taken anywhere else because that is a long journey to be able to transfer organics. And so it's saying, hey, there's this, all producers have to sign into this with the the producer responsibility organization, sign up. Uh, Producers over $1 million worth of revenue, I think it is. And they have to ensure that their product can be recycled or composted. And if not, they have to have a pathway to get there without getting into all of the details.
Right.
And there's a pot of money that they have to put into annually. That money then is distributed back out to municipalities, uh, collectors and processors, and then the ultimate recyclers in order to build the infrastructure that may not exist in order to get us to where we need to be. Or if the infrastructure doesn't exist, the markets don't exist, or it just needs, this recycling center over here needs a couple more eddy current separators or a magnet or whatever it may be, we can get them those funds. And so there's going to be a quote reimbursement model that every year that these downstream entities can be able to tap into in order to help build the infrastructure that has to exist. In addition, they have to ensure somehow that the products they are creating as manufacturers are taking recycled content and putting it back into their products. Because if we can make recycled content toward our recycled material until we're blue in the face, but if no one is buying that material because it's cheaper to use virgin product in virgin resin for
Right.
plastics, it's cheaper to use virgin resin, then they're not going to utilize it. So they have to do that. There has to be money put towards reuse systems. There's figures against that as well, of being able to make sure that there's reuse opportunities within grocery stores to reduce packaging. Um, there's a community fund for impacted communities. There's a lot that's going on with this bill. It's probably going to get caught up in the court system a bit, but it is moving forward as is at this moment. Going back to extended producer responsibility, manufacturing's responsibility. So what are things that we fundamentally can do? Well, it's a hard one because some of what I usually say when I give speeches is that, recycling's not dead and the state of the global recycling system is not our fault. However, we use products, we buy products, we dispose of products. We are never, and most of us on this call can vote, so we are never inevitably part of the solution. There is ethical weight on us. It's not off of us. We're part of a whole entire solution of things. Unfortunately, we are in a situation that the manufacturers of products say, this is all we have. We have no other choice than to buy those products. I am in a situation where I have to buy because I have severe allergies. I have to buy packaged goods. I can't buy bulk because the potential of cross contamination is too high for me. But we are in a situation where it's like I have a shower curtain right now, that a liner that's moldy, that I know too much about plastics to know what kind of toxins I don't want in my house. And there is a very specific thing I need to find for that. But now the manufacturers of these products have, well, the Amazons of the world have continuously come in and shut down our opportunities to be able to purchase locally. Then they came in and shut down the opportunities for us to purchase locally from big brands, big shops, the Bed Bath and Beyonds of the world. And now we
Yeah.
are stuck from if we can't find it online, we're stuck buying it from Amazon.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out that sometimes our responsibility is incredibly limited, and I don't want people to feel as if they're, you know, that they're. I, I don't want people to feel like they're on this uphill battle, but we sort of are. And we, when it comes to what we can do in regards to manufacturers, we need to vote. We need to make sure that we get behind legislation, what all of y'all are doing right now. We need to make sure that these manufacturers know what it is that we want.
Yeah.
Um, that one of the things that, I'm coming up against right now with SB 54 is that they are like, well, if you're going to make us spend all this money and put this money into a pot, and you're going to make us change our material composition, which they've already done in Europe, we're going to raise the prices on people. And so they use that as a scare tactic. And
Yeah.
we as a community have to push back on that. And we have to allow our legislative body to know that they can push back on it. We can have people that are our governor who are running potentially for presidential office who are, I always say this isn't a party thing.
Yeah.
We have people on, our governor, we have people on the left that are getting behind the manufacturers because you have to follow where the money goes.
Depends on how
And
you want to define that left right thing, because I mean, I've
oh,
mentioned it
very
in
much.
I've mentioned that in our interviews before, where
Yep.
my personal opinion is that he's been running to the right for a while, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Let
will
me ask
say
you a
though,
follow-up
if for
question.
responsibility, I would say
Yeah, yeah.
compost, 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 compost.
Let me
Use
ask
your
you
your
a
green
follow-up
container.
question about that kind of like individual product choice, and I'll just share a
Hmm.
personal kind of experience. So, one of the things that a product that's always driven me crazy because I feel like I can't find a good sustainable solution is just toothpaste tubes. They're big plastic toothpaste tubes, and I try to avoid the plastic where possible. So not too long ago, I decided, well, I'm going to try to use these toothpaste tablets. You don't have to have the plastic tube. I can't find them at any local retailers. They probably exist somewhere in Los Angeles, but I have not been able to find them. So I do end up ordering them online because that's the way I can access them. And so then I get them online. They arrive in a box cover that's taped shut with plastic tape. I open it. There's another box that is taped shut with plastic tape. And then I open that, and the glass jar with the metal lid that says plastic free on it is taped shut with the plastic tape. I take the plastic tape off, open it up, and there's a piece of styrofoam in the top of the lid of the jar before I get it and actually am able to access my toothpaste tablets that are indeed plastic free. And that kind of stuff, that if you're willing to go to those kind of extremes to even try to do stuff, and then you encounter those kind of things, it becomes quite frustrating in terms of, well, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, kind of a thing.
Oh, seeing some of the things. The tape is paper, yeah. The tape is paper probably, and the glue on the tape, unfortunately for me, is probably wheat, wheat gluten. So a lot of the things that we sometimes think are plastic are sometimes a clay base, they're paper base. Always ask the manufacturer. Let the manufacturer know what you want. Ask them for the details of their product. I go and scour their sites. I go and do my Google searches. And then if I can't answer that, I go to their Instagram pages. I send them a note and I get the answers that I need. When it comes to uh, getting products with the least amount of packaging possible, I would say shop at your local refill store if you have the privilege to be able to afford that.
And for those of you who don't know what a refill store is, there's a chain that's actually called Refill and another one that misspells it a different way. But you're referring to places where you can take in containers and actually buy liquids or powders and things that are put into your existing containers.
And they have the tabs. I got the tabs. I use the
Oh, is
tabs.
that
I like
that?
the
All
tabs.
right, all right. Then I need to work harder to find them in a different place.
But
But before we leave,
you make a good point though. Like this toothpaste too. They the lore of this thing is that the the manufacturers thought they were going to do a good thing by using a plastic that could be recycled, polypropylene, number five. And so you had these chains or these manufacturers, I think it was Colgate or someone was like, great, we're going to change it to polypropylene number five. Now they would come to us. Now you can take it, right? Murph Materials Recovery Facility, you can capture it right now because it's a number five. And I'm like, well, we're not set up to capture that. That is a very small little product. You're the only number fives. Everyone else is like a random, it could be a seven, it could be a four, it could be whatever. It could be a six. I don't know. We're not flipping it over and looking at it. And our optical sorters, which are using light in order to read these packages, they're not reading on these materials. So the whole entire industry would need to change its packaging in order for that to even have the potential value of being picked off the line. And then they would need to then work with the recycling, not the recycling like sorters, what we call the recycling facility, but we're just sorters. The people that the businesses that are actually pelletizing this stuff, breaking it down and pelletizing it again, they have to work with them to say, do you even want this product? And if
right.
you want this product, how should it be designed on the upfront, go through the system so that they actually can be designed so it can be captured. And then at the back end, how can it actually be broken down? What do you want us to do? And that is the problem that has been happening, is that these manufacturers are going out of their way to say they're doing something that's environmentally friendly, the PepsiCos and the Coca-Colas of the world, and never talking to the whole chain of process along the way to ask us what it is that we need of them. And that was one of them. I think it was the Colgate toothpaste too. It was a story
Well,
of that.
I'm curious how we can, as advocates, uh, bridge that gap. Is there a way to do that? Is there a manner in which we can either require that communication to happen or facilitate it through some other mechanism?
It's activism. SB 54 is a godsend in my opinion. They're
Well,
all coming
to
to
that
us now.
point, you work at one of the largest, largest waste handlers really in the country, and just you do a massive amount
In the
of
state, in the state,
upscale,
not the
okay,
country.
in the state,
Oh,
but you
Southern
guys do
California.
things at scale because you're connected to one of the most populated areas in the country, and it does create opportunities for scale. Both within our footprint, there's Los Angeles at millions and millions of people, and we also have towns like Indian Wells in Riverside County, which has like 5,000
Mhm.
people. That they are never going to have the scale to do the kind of things that you can do at a massive Athens facility. So, how does SB 54 address the issue of the fact that it's a very different issue if you have a really small community, and we have lots of small communities
Mhm.
in California.
So SB 54, as I said, I feel like if I'm really hoping that
Excuse
it
me.
sustains, because the nature of this bill is that it's supposed to uplift those communities that don't have the resources available to them so that they can get to that product. Because unless we're telling some small, hey, Los Angeles can make as much waste and recycling as possible as they want to, but you small community of,
Right.
a few thousand people, you're not allowed to consume anymore. You have to consume less in order to make an impact. That's not it's not feasible. It's
Well,
not equitable and that's not feasible.
where I was raised
But
in rural Kansas, that's their excuse for not doing anything. I mean, and I know different politics, different state, but it's definitely something where
well,
that's a case where regulation is necessary and state
yeah, and with
action.
SB 54, the point is that it's supposed to be able to say, hey, look, you want us to get to polypro, like a recycling center is going to get to bottles and cans. That's subsidized already. That's not even part of SB 54. It's going to be able to get to a lot of the metals, maybe not the non-ferrous, but the ferrous material, the stuff that has a magnetic pull. It's going to be able to get to cardboard, potentially paper, maybe not as clean as they would want it to, but it's going to be able to get to like the top items. But when it starts coming down to we want to use, I'm not saying plastic's great, it's here, it's not going anywhere. Hopefully we can minimize it. But if they're saying we're going to use polypropylene, we need you to collect this. And they're like, look, we don't have optical sorters. We're not going to be able to get to this material. SB 54 is supposed to be in place in order to subsidize that for them to be able to upgrade their facilities, to be able to find the markets for them so that they are able to participate in that manner. Because it's like, the real life excuses are we don't have the facility, we don't have the means, we don't have the human capacity in order to work the facility because we don't have enough money or materials coming in order to pay these people. How are we going to do this? That money in this pot for SB 54 is supposed to pay for that. It sounds like a bit, and I'm just like, I'm knocking on wood, like I'm hoping against hope that this is exactly what comes out of this bill.
Fair enough.
Because yeah,
Yeah. So let's hope for the best and keep an eye on it. I guess that's all we can do. With respect to, you've worked really on both sides of the recycling equation. I mean, in terms of community organizer, getting people to recycle, getting community awareness about it, and then from the hauler standpoint of knowing what the consequences are of what we put into the recycling stream. And you and I have also discussed this when we had our tour, but I would like to hear again your perspective on the phenomenon of wish cycling, and how when people aren't sure whether something's recyclable, they tend to put it into the stream, and how that can actually cause problems in some cases more than if they just send it to the landfill. And basically just give me kind of your take on that, having been on both sides of that equation.
yeah, yeah. So the concept of wish cycling, as you said, that you just wish I'm going to put it in this container and I'm going to wish really hard that my bioplastics is going to get composted and my this weird looking plastic thing or this container is going to get recycled, and you're
I
making
mean,
a
it's
wish while you're putting it
plastic-ish.
in,
They can
right?
figure it out, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the, the confusion of all of this started when they had an excess amount of material and said, what can we do with it? Or, back in the 50s and said, hey, we're creating oil, we're doing X, Y, and Z. We have this plastic thing that we created. What can we do with it? Well, oh, we can make packaging.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of material flooding into our nuclear family homes for quite a while. And then that was causing a lot of backup. Like, is this getting sent to the landfill? Is this getting put out into the environment? How are you supposed to manage this? Government said, hey, manufacturers, you better figure something out. And they said, cool, we're going to come up with the chasing arrows. I think that was a USC graduate. I think that created that. Come up with the chasing arrows, and we're going to push a litter campaign. Don't be a litter bug. Don't throw it out in the environment. It's your responsibility to be able to do something with this. Hey, we numbered the plastics so that you can know what they are. Good job. Look at the bottom of it, and hopefully you're doing well when you put it in the container.
Give a
And they
hoot, don't
did.
pollute.
Yeah, they didn't really take into consideration any of the downstream responsibility that actually had to happen. And so now we're in the situation where many of us have been taught like it's all going to be taken care of, it all goes away, it goes somewhere. And then we're sold this idea for a really long time that nothing should ever go to the landfill. And in all truth, I really wish nothing went to the landfill, but we're not in that situation. And I'd rather send something to the landfill than ship it across the country to some business that's telling me that they're going to be able to turn it into flower pots, but they're not even honest with their programming, where their material goes, who are their vendors. And now I'm spending more greenhouse gas emissions to ship
Yeah.
this thing to New Jersey because, oh, maybe it can get recycled because I was told that I'm the utmost environmentalist if I recycle. And if I don't recycle and oh my God, it goes to the landfill, there's something wrong with me.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but there are situations wherein the second use of a product can actually be more destructive than the first use, because you're taking a degraded plastic situation and putting it out there where it still has a limited use, and sometimes is more apt to end up in the watershed in that second form. So,
I think I would say for me, if I'm looking at it that way, I would look at the I would look at it holistically.
to be
How
clear,
much energy?
I'm thinking about things like plastic fabrics, the clothing that's made from recycled bottles, things along
Yeah,
those lines, which break down very quickly. Go ahead. So,
very quickly. But
yeah.
all of our plastic clothing is shedding microfibers every single
Yes.
time we wash it.
Yeah.
And that the one thing, just a side note, the largest amount of ingestion of plastic you will ever have is is the air you breathe. So every single time you unscrew a water bottle with the top, there's thousands of microplastics are going up into the air and you're breathing those in every single time. Using a toothbrush with plastic bristles, you're getting plastic in your mouth. And I don't even know how to avoid that because bioplastic is just as bad. You shouldn't be ingesting that
Well, there's
either.
the old
But
pork hair toothbrushes that they have from back in the day, but
I have to brush your teeth. But
yeah, yeah,
um so I look at it as a little bit like what's the energy use of being able to create this product and then break it back down and recycle it? What's the energy use? What's the water use? And what is the environmental and health impact? And weighing those against each other. So if I'm spending more energy and water to recycle this thing down into another product than creating that product in the first place, is it is it really worth it at that point? And
yeah,
is there any other solution that I might be able to do? Do I have enough money to buy something else? Do I have enough time allotted to me to be able to make it a little bit more inconvenient for myself to go get something from another store versus like having it delivered to myself? Is it, can I make it myself? Like, but we're not all allotted the same privileges, right? And so one person's solution might not be the other person's solution.
right, right, right. And these things have to be solved at the producer end, or we're just never
They
going
do.
to solve them ultimately. Tell me, and I'm going to open this up to questions in a second here. But before I do that, is there one thing, or even one or two things, that you wish were common knowledge with respect to our waste system and recycling and things that we do that we commonly do now because we are assuming we're doing something right that's not right? And in fairness, I didn't ask you this in the pre-interview. It just kind of occurred to me while we were talking. So
It might come out when I'm tempting too. Um, oh my gosh.
you want to think on that one? No.
No, I'll tell you what I think I'll tell you what I think the biggest solution is for all of us, where
Okay.
we can make the biggest impact and where people might not realize they can make the biggest impact. With y'all, I think you might know this, but the biggest impact that we can have that we as the individual human can have within this resource management process, where we know that I can take this product and I can make something out of it and I can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and I'm not beholden to a manufacturer, I'm not beholden to the oil industry. Is it recycling? It's compost. If you're able to compost in your backyard, fantastic. If you're able to use your green bin, because we all can put organics in our green bin at this point, in our cart or our dumpster. If you're in a multifamily residential unit and they don't have organics yet, they legally have to. Or multifamily residential complexes under SB 1383 should not be getting waivers. If you're in the city of Los Angeles and they don't have it yet, it's because they're denying it and the city is allowing them to get away with it. So they have to have an organics container. It is very hard to get a waiver. And usually when the city of LA gives out waivers, it's not a waiver. It's you have a waiver for a short period of time while we assess the situation. And
Yeah.
then we will tell you what you need to do. And they're probably waiting on that because they're waiting for Recycla 2.0 and the contract that we start on February 1st. But organics is getting that material out of the landfill and getting it into a system where you can compost it locally. You can go and drop it off at an LA compost situation. You can take it to your community garden. You can do a combination of both because maybe your community garden doesn't take meat and dairy, but your curbside does for sure. That is where you have the most power and impact within the resource management system. And there's a lot of assumptions on products out there that saying they're recyclable or compostable when they're not. With my job with Athens Services, I we have a what goes where guide that we try to be as transparent as possible. And I think it's got 420 plus guide items on it. So it's just me and my team of one other person, Iki, that created this guide. So I could get into some of the ones that people assume are recyclable or compostable, but I would say if you just go to canirecyclemmy.com, we try to uh, break it down for you so that if you want to nerd out on it, you can.
Canirecycle.com.
Can I, oh, canirecyclemmy.com. But if you go to athensservices.com website, it's the recycling guide up in the right hand corner.
Andy, could you grab that website and put it in the chat so while we're having this conversation, buddy? Appreciate it.
Yeah, which
Uh,
one?
well,
Canirecyclemmy.com. I can grab it too.
Don't worry,
If
keep
you,
talking.
okay.
I'll keep talking. So I have lots more. I'd love to talk to you for another hour, at least on the composting issue. We talked about it, as I mentioned, a lot at our last biodiversity committee meeting, and I know they are holding on to some questions for you. So I want to get to the point where you open up to that instead of hogging you completely to myself. I'll end it with
That's
my
true.
question that I throw to everybody when my portion ends, which is when you are out there doing work and your environmental work and you're reaching an impediment and you just time and again get shut down in something that you're working on, and
Hmm.
it's one of those days when or one of those months, whatever, when you feel like, my God, why am I doing this? There's so many people shutting me down, trying to stop me everywhere, and I'll never make progress on this. What is it you personally do to kind of recharge, regroup, and to keep fighting the good fight?
I think it comes back to what I didn't do for a really long time. And
How
I mean,
so?
I was working for Athens. I was teaching college 2 days a week. I was organizing the largest climate march in Los Angeles history at that time. I was helping to organize a coalition of 110 plus organizations. And then from there, I did that for 10 years or so and started was the second host for Eco Justice Radio. And I was doing that every single weekend. And I was burning the candle at both ends. And I had no quality of life. I was loving what I was doing, and but I was not taking care of myself. And I have people say to me, "Oh my God, I got a meeting with Jessica Aldridge," and I was like, "Oh, what does that mean?" And I think that was the first time it shocked me of like, I'm not readily available to even to myself. I'm not readily available to just be a friend, to just, be in community outside of organizing. And one of the things that I would say is, you know, you have to build and sustain a community outside of the organizing that we do. Like even if y'all get together on the weekends, don't talk about this stuff for a moment and build that community, because it's so easy to get lost in it. It's so easy
Yeah.
to be like, this is my family and we're just organizing 24/7. And it ran me into the ground, and it ran my health into the ground. And so now I had to actively make sure that I was bringing beautiful things back into my life, that I was taking time for myself. My really great friend got me, my dad's a drummer. I come from a family of drummers and I like to use my hands a lot. And he got me poi. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And I just like sit and meditate and do poi. I play my drum. I go out into nature when I can. And sometimes if us Angelinos know that it's hard to get out in nature sometimes, right? But just making yourself do those things and making time for yourself, and stop always thinking about this. It will run you into the ground if you just don't let your clear your mind once in a while.
That's very, I think, self-aware, and a very self-aware answer. And thank you for that. I appreciate it. All right, folks, I'm going to open it up. Andy, if you could rip us out of the spotlight, I want to open it up to people who have questions. I'm sure there are multiple ones out there. Just raise your little virtual hand, and as is not terribly unusual, Anne is first.
Oh, yeah, because my question started earlier. Thanks, Jessica, for coming to our meeting. You had mentioned that the producers they threaten to increase prices because we are asking them to do these extra things. But isn't it better to increase prices because that could reduce demand for goods, like customer demand for goods. I feel like there's so many plastic tchotchkes, like, parties with giveaways, um, just souvenirs, like things that don't need to be bought by anyone. So,
Uh,
is raising prices such a bad thing?
yeah, I mean, I think we have to look at, well, two thoughts here, and I'm going to write some notes so that my brain doesn't go off. So one is, what's our economy look like, and then the other is what is being affected. So if we look at conceptually, like, hey, if we raise the prices of this stuff, maybe people will buy less of it. That conceptually is true. However, we're talking about packaging. So a lot of that packaging is going to be related to our food. And so our food prices are already going up. So when we're in an economic crisis, like we kind of are right now, people are already buying less of the things they don't need. And so, and the manufacturers know that. So the things that are going to be hit with those price increases are the things that we actually need to live. And the people who are going to be affected the most are the ones who don't have the ability to put that much money into their food, into the things that are necessities of living. The gas to get to your that's not packaging, but the oil prices, as we see, are going up. So to get to your job, the food to feed your kids. And so if if the price of food goes up, then the quality of the food that people are feeding themselves and feeding their kids is also going to go down, because they're going to be buying things that are less nutritious. And so it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, technically, yes, but then what else is being affected, right? And I don't know how we write legislation in order to combat that. I mean, the truth in labeling law, which is connected to SB 54, which pretty much just says, unless this thing is truly recyclable, you can't slap a chasing arrows on it. Oh, we got a federal injunction from, like, I don't know, 14 states or something. And now they're going to try to, you know, make a California piece of legislation die because they want to continue to put something as recyclable on their package. It blows my mind. So I don't know if it answers your question fully, but I'm concerned because I don't know if it truly is going to have the effect that we're like, if it's going to have that type of positive effect, you know?
Yeah, it is hard to separate out the essential, like plastic that makes pill bottles from
Yeah,
keychains.
yeah.
Mary.
Great, thanks. Hi, Jessica. This is Mary. I'm on the biodiversity committee. Thanks for being here. You were talking about composting being something we can do that has the biggest impact. Are you able to speak a little bit to, I guess, maybe the quality of what goes into the compost when the city is taking away what we have in our green bins, which people can put whatever they want in there? We were talking about microplastics before too. So is there, I guess, a way to measure for, let's say, quality of what's in that compost that's coming out of our green bins that the city is creating? Is there a level of microplastics in there? Can that be measured and tested? Or, what are your thoughts on how that's actually going in terms of the quality of that compost?
Yeah, so there's two different ways of managing organics. You're going to manage it in an aerobic system or an anaerobic system. So an aerobic system is compost, in essence. So you're going to put it in piles. There's different types of aerobic systems. Most of them right now are going to aerated static piles, which means it's a pile on the ground and there's air being pushed up within the pile. And these are usually at scale, but then you'll have windrow technology and static piles with, like, LA compost, and in small community garden situations, and then you'll have industrial size ones as well. And then you have to get it up to a certain temperature, and then, in what they're doing here currently is, because so much organics is coming into the system, they have to process this organics a lot quicker than they used to. And so the material can't sit in on that ground for too long. It needs to be turned into compost as soon as possible. So that also limits some of the material that can go into that compost, like bioplastics. And there's other reasons, but so it's usually a 30-day processing with another 30 days of curing time for the sake of generalization. And on the back end, you're going to have compost. That compost, in order for these large scale facilities, I cannot talk about local composting infrastructure because I don't do that, but I do my friends do, like, you know, LA Compost and stuff, and I trust the compost that they're making, but they're also they're limited on what they can take as well on purpose. But that has a pathogen reduction test, or has a pathogen reduction process that has to go through, and then there are tests of that compost that have to happen in order for that compost to be able to be certified for use. And then a lot of those composts, like ours and many, have OMRI certification, Organics Material Review Institute certification, and California Department of Food and Agriculture, for lack of a better word, certification. And they have to meet specific standards. Unfortunately, people just willy-nilly use their containers, not as well as I'd say the rest of us would like to. Or there's, you know, problems. Oh God, there you go. Even scavenging problems. In my street, they'll use the organics bin in order to move all the stuff from the recycle bin in order to get to the CRVs and then put it back in, or maybe not put it back in at all. So the process to be able to get to this material and turn it into compost has to have something on the upfront to be able to get out the contaminants. I would really love it if we had less contaminants in the organics. A lot of the contaminants are going to be coming from the single family dwelling situations, units of 1 to 4. Less on the commercial side because there's a lot more site going into the commercial side of things. And then, not to make it too long, so then there's the anaerobic side of it. So that is capturing the energy off of this. That stream that goes to anaerobic is going to be a lot dirtier with contamination. City of Los Angeles is going to be using a lot of AD. I would say that the city of Los Angeles, out of all of the cities that I work with and my fellow people within the industry, has the dirtiest organics of them all. And in order to actually make something valuable out of that organics, that stuff needs to be pressed. The juices need to be removed from it. Those juices are then sent to a wastewater treatment plant. The energy is captured off of those juices. And if what they pressed originally is more organic based material, so what's coming out on the residual end is mostly organics, then that's going to be sent to another facility like an aerobic to be processed further. If most of the material that came out of that, the residual back end, is packaging and gross and not really going to be able to be processed, that material is going to be landfilled at that point. So there are mechanics in place in order to identify the potential for contamination. Most people are not going to be taking their stuff to a local composting infrastructure. They're not going to make the time to do it. But the ones that do, you know that it's going to be pretty clean, because if it's not, they're going to get turned away really quickly.
That was a fabulous answer, by the way, to a question that you gave me a lot of extra insight on. Thank you. Okay, folks, it is almost 8:20, and we've only got until 8:30 with Jessica here and her wonderful, generous time. So try to keep your question, try to keep your question very brief. And so we've got a chance for the last 5 people. Terry, you're the last question, and we're going to try to buzz through them here really quickly to make sure everybody has a chance to get it in. Andy.
All right. I'll cheat and ask you another question later about water. But do you have a stance on dirty MRFs versus California's current ban on them? Because I'm just curious, because I know about waste, but you know more than I do.
There is no ban on dirty MRFs.
Oh, there isn't a ban. Okay,
no.
Good to know.
They're called mixed materials facilities, and Athens is a mixed materials facility. However, we're trying to get all of our cities to transfer from 2-stream over to 3-stream. And so when I got to Athens, we had a lot of mixed materials processing accounts where everything went into one container. But in that situation, the ideal situation for that sort of mixed materials processing is to make sure your organics is in one container and your trash and recycling are in another container, because you're getting a lot of that wet contamination factor out of the container, which helps the MRFs, the materials recovery facilities, be able to get at a higher processing rate for that material. Under SB 1383, you have to, in order for your MRF to be able to take organics, you have to have a high diverting MRF. Most facilities can't reach that threshold. Thus, it's not a ban, but what you're going to see is a lot of mixed materials MRFs go to the wayside. But I would say that we're one of the largest, and we made the transition, and we're trying to convince all of our cities that they need to make the there's 2 or 3-stream transition. But when you're processing material with organics in it, it's a lot harder, and it's going to degrade that material a lot more. But when you are able to get the organics out, the MRFs are going to be able to work at a higher capacity.
Thank you.
Sevi.
Thanks so much for all your words. Feels very educational and kind of just culture building. As someone who grew up recycling as a kid and someone who's working in the space kind of from a robotics angle, it always feels like by the time you're getting to the MRFs, it's already too late in terms of the commingling and the contamination with the recyclables. Do you think there's value in being able to explore opportunities to separate the material earlier upstream, like at the point of disposal? Like, let's say a consumer is able to throw something away and it's immediately separated from plastic, aluminum, glass, food waste. Do you think MRFs see value in like being able to get pre-sorted waste material?
Problem is the community's not going to do it. So Europe has the systems already in place for like big bellies underneath the ground, and they don't do curbside collection, right? They have to walk it. Many places in Europe have to walk it to a separation center where everyone does it in separate containers, are all sorting it out, and then the truck comes over. They take this machine, they pull it out, this big drum of where all that material is, and you have that one truck taking that glass or taking that plastic or taking that film, whatever it is, and it's one truck going to one stop. Unfortunately, we used to have dual stream processing here, everywhere across the country, where where they actually have recycling infrastructure in place, where there was a separate container for paper, a separate container for glass, a separate container for your metals. And you had a truck where it was going into different compartments. But can you imagine how quickly those trucks would get filled up with? Once one compartment is filled up, it has to go back and empty and come back. You would have to have more trucks on the road, more drivers, more fuel being, if it be gasoline, natural gas, electric, whatever it is, and then that's going to cause more detriment to the road, because the more heavier vehicles that you have driving on these streets, then you're going to have more road damage. And you're going to have more opportunities for safety issues, because when it is a dual stream situation, they have to get out of the vehicle, they have to take it, dump it in, put it back down. The most amount of accidents that happen to a waste worker, which used to be one of the top 5 most dangerous jobs, I think it's now in the top 10, is the moment they exit that cab. So that it's the wear and tear it has on their knees, on their legs, the potential of being pinned up against a container or hit by a vehicle, because as you've probably seen, people don't respect trash trucks. And so there's a lot of potential issues that were taken care of by going to a one-stream model for recycling. So I think we would get to a higher value on some of the materials, especially for paper, but we're just not in a situation to where that would probably be feasible anymore. But with the mechanics, and I think Charles can fill you in on that if you weren't at the materials recovery facility, the MRF tour, it is so high tech now. You can get to that material so incredibly well, and it's just getting better and better. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be going back to a dual stream model.
Yeah, we're going to hopefully try to do another tour, either at Athens or some other place next year. It was fascinating to see how far the technology has come. Karen.
Ah, sorry about that. I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
We
Yep.
can.
Um, so composting, well, I'm just wondering if Athens has ever thought about like, or maybe this is where we work with our cities, like to do like composting by the block or something. Um, and I know being in California, like we had composting and we had worms, but then they dried out because we didn't hose it every day. And so then water's an issue. It's just and I've been just exploring it and it's just so much more complicated than I fully had understood. And there's also the whole like role of worms. And there's a church I know of that breeds earthworms and sells them and is doing amazing things, but I don't even fully comprehend how worms fit into the whole thing. But I've thought about farming worms too. Just I live in Altadena and I thought maybe that'd be a great way to clean the soil in people's yards. Um,
Short on time, Karen. Do you have a question?
Short. So I just wondered if there's any exploration of like local solutions by these big trash companies, or if that just isn't even on the radar.
Don't let a trash company tell you that that's not a solution. I there's the Compost Association in North, what, oh, I forget, it's a small composters association. I can't think of the name. There's a lot of localized composting solutions that exist and people doing amazing things that are coming together and looking at what solutions would look like. I can't say much because Recycla 2.0 has not been um, finalized. It's not the resellers haven't been chosen, and we're not allowed to speak to what's it all about. I'm trying to be as vague as possible, but I think that you're going to see a lot of examples of solutions, hopefully, that can be repeated in other cities that support localized composting opportunities and what those partnerships may look like.
Well, that's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
More to come. And maybe we can have a conversation in a year, Charles, about what that all looks like.
You're welcome anytime. I think there's really a lot of interest for the work that you're doing. Vivian?
Yeah, hi. I think you touched on some of what I was going to ask, but my question was again about the composting and how we can get more of the public to be motivated to do it. Right now, it seems like a lot of it is driven by individual responsibility, like whether you do worm composting or you actually use your green bins. But from what I understand, it sounds like the general public is still not really participating a ton. So, do you have any ideas on like solutions for that?
I think there's going to have to be a multitude of solutions and opportunities because not everyone has the same touch point, right? Not everyone has the same opportunities to them. They don't have the same time. They don't have the same, opportunity to participate is what I mean. Or they may not have they may want to participate but not have a local composting drop off around them, or they don't, or they're just not that interested in what is going to make them interested, right? And so I think it's creating the systems, under the jurisdictions have to take a holistic approach. If I'm talking about in my role as a waste hauler, as the director of sustainability for one of the largest recycling companies in Southern California, and I'm working with all these jurisdictions. What are things that we can do? What kind of outreach and education can happen? What can the jurisdiction do in order to communicate that the potential slew of opportunities to their to their residents? how do we go about that? And I don't think any of us have figured out what the perfect solution is quite yet. We can send people flyers till we're blue in the face. We can, for single family residents, we don't, like in city of LA, we're not even over those accounts, but let's say in other cities, we don't do door-to-door outreach. We don't have, as a waste hauler, the opportunity or the ability to do door-to-door outreach. Are there organizations that the jurisdictions can work with in order to do stuff like that? Are there ways that the jurisdictions can communicate more broadly? Is there things that we can do as a waste hauler? Are we putting things in, newsletters and blogs and whatever it is? I think we all need to sort of sit down and say, what does education look like, and how do people actually want to participate? And there's the importance factor of it as well. People need to understand why they need to participate and why it matters to them, and how it's not going to be an inconvenience to them. Because if we put it upon them and say, well, you just need to do this, as we do with any climate oriented solution, you just got to be concerned about this, and it's really important, and you just really need to do something about it. And the person's like, I don't really understand what's happening. I got a life to go live. I got to go pay my bills. It's not really we're not really speaking to where they're at. We're not taking the time to figure out, like, where are you, what are your concerns, and how do you want to participate? And I don't know yet how we get to that. I have a lot of different outreach and education programs that we've created for schools, for multifamily, for a recycling ambassador program, for restaurants, for all of this, but it's only touching the surface every single time. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but I think I was kind of rambling there, but I think we all have to come together and figure out what that is. And we have to figure out how to communicate to people in all sorts of ways.
Okay, Terry, one quick last question.
Hey Jessica, I guess I'll pick one question, and the hard question, why is BPI certifying non-compostable bioplastic and foodware with PLA lining?
Why is it not acceptable?
Why are they letting products label their products compostable when we all know that processors aren't composting it in the BPI timeframe?
Doesn't mean it's not compostable. That's why. So BPI certification is that's just one of the compostable certifications for everyone.
Which stands for?
Biodegradable Products Institute. I don't know what TUBE stands for. And there's another one, I can't think of it right now. And they only, all of these compostable, it looks like plastic, quacks like plastic, acts like plastic, but is made out of plants. And then there's also fiberware that could have a coating or a spray on it that's bioplastic, acts as a grease barrier. And then there's fiberware that has no bioplastic in it. If it is certified compostable, and also want to say only foodware packaging can be certified compostable. So when you see like a Pele case for your phone or shoes or any of that, oh, it's compostable. It's not certified compostable because there is no compost certification for anything other than foodware. And so when they say it is certified compostable, it meets ASTM standards, American, that one I'm not going to remember off the top of my head right now, but it's the standards by which it has to reduce, it has to break down in a specific time limit. It can't have toxicity enter the soil. There can't be leftover remnants of the product. It has to degrade in the time that it says. And that compostability is usually for the compostable certifications is usually 90 days. And it does. If it is certified compostable, for the most part, I don't know how they're doing the utensils, but for the most part, it usually will break down within the time period it's supposed to. However, the compost facilities have a shorter time period because they need to move this product really quickly. It has to get up to a certain degree and it has to go through a cooling process, and then it's got to move. These compost facilities are following National Organics Program standards so that they can get their OMRI certification, as I said before, Organics Material Review Institute, and CDFA license. And because the farms, even if they're not organic producing farms, like they're not producing organic produce, they still want the higher quality compost. So they want the compost that has the Armory certification and CDFA license. And so that is, if we take as a compost facility anything that the NOP deems as inorganic material, we are not allowed to sell that compost to these organic farms or any of the farms that want those certifications. We will not get our Armory certification. Now they say, well, you can biofricate, which means you can go, that pile over there is for the where you put the bioplastics, and then that pile over there is where we have no bioplastics. Unfortunately, that's almost next to impossible for most compost facilities because they're limited on land. Plus, the equipment, the humic capacity, everything that goes in has to be separated. If you end up having a truckload of material with bioplastics come in, it cannot touch that other pile. If you have equipment that works on the bioplastics windrow, it cannot touch the other pile. So many of these facilities are like, we can't do that. Plus, there's an identification problem. So bioplastics, technically, at this point, we could use optical sorters, but most of the compost facilities aren't going to have optical sorters. They have I didn't say this about contamination with the compost earlier, but there's usually, like for us, the ones that have the ability to do this, we have sort of a mini MRF at the front end of the compost processing to get out all the contaminants before the compost gets shredded and then put into the pile. We are not legally even allowed to say, oh, put your bioplastics in, we'll separate them out for you. We have to say no, because we'll lose those certifications. Then there's the identification problem of if it quacks like plastic, looks like plastic, acts like plastic, no one's going to go, oh, let me flip over the container and see if it's a compostable. Oh, let me see if it's got a green stripe on it and see if it's compostable. They're not going to take the risk. And we don't even take the risk. Like we say, all of our organics need to, it can be put in loose. But if you put it in a bag, that bag has to be translucent, like with that green see-through plastic bag, or it's got to be in a clear bag. It could be petro, it could be compostable. Don't care because the bag's going to be ripped open and thrown away, but we got to see it. And if that bag is black and I can't see through that bag, we're just going to immediately throw it away because we're not going to take the risk of contamination because of the potential of losing our NOP. Or not passing our pathogen reduction test, you know? So it's not that they're greenwashing per se, it's that they're not able to meet the qualifiers that need to exist in order for that material to actually break down within the system. I personally believe if the NOP were, because the NOP is continuously I don't know what it is every 6 years or whatever, it goes through a review process, might be less than that, is like, they do a large swath. Nope, all bioplastics, we're still not going to say yes to them. They need to do it as a product by product basis for approval on the NOP. And I think if they were to do the coating for the fiberware with the sprayed on coating for the PLA, the polylactic acid, or the PHA, I think, I'm not a compost expert, but I think that product would actually be able to break down within that 30 to 60 days of necessary time. But here's the last kicker on all of it. If we decide that we're going to get rid of all, let's say the NOP says, yes, you can use bioplastics, or yes, you can use the lined fiberware, or let's just use fiberware, 100% fiberware. And we're like, we're going to get rid of all plastic packaging. We're going to go to 100% compostable packaging. Where in the heck are we going to process all that material? A compost facility has to have 3 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. If we have truckloads of bioplastics or fiberware, 100% fiberware coming into our compost facility, how is that going to make compost? So the solution isn't getting rid of
to be
plastic.
clear for those who are really, really on the outside of this, the problem is you have too much dry material and not enough wet material.
Yes,
essentially,
yes,
right?
thank you. Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you. And so you've all this dry material, you're just going to have a dead pile. It's not going to turn into compost. So the solution is reducing our consumption in the first place, not trying to find an alternative. Finding an alternative plastic is great, but it's not just switching it out to something else. It's reducing our consumption in the first place and not needing it because we're not going to be able to compost all that material. Yeah. So it's all the problem. Sorry. That's one of my areas that I can speak to for days and days and days is compostability. So I get
Jessica,
really
clearly
passionate.
you are a gold mine of information, and we have barely tapped the vein. I do hope we can do another follow-up interview here. This is one of the best ones we've ever done. Usually I'm kind of cajoling people to get them to ask questions because they're shy, but we had to turn people away in this one. So you were absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday evening with us and sharing your wealth of information with us. And please know you're a part of our family. You're welcome here. Please engage with us at any time and be part of what we're doing going forward as much as you are ready to do so. But yes, thank you. I'll thank you for all the thumbs up from everybody as well. So this
Thank
was
you.
a wonderful interview. Thank you very much. Very, very